One policy just altered the global oil supply dynamic, and it changes who controls how much oil enters the market. It came through a US approval granted to Reliance. Why would this happen now, and what does it mean for India and the global energy prices? Because marginal supply control determines the pricing power in oil market. And by the end of this video, you will understand how this affects the refining margins, India's energy strategy, inflation expectations, and global supply stability. Reliance has received US approval to import Venezuelan crude oil. Venezuela has been under heavy sanctions. This approval does not remove sanctions entirely, it allows controlled exports under specific conditions. This is not a random trade, it's calibrated supply flexibility. Understand why this matters, we need to understand the concept of marginal supply. Oil prices are not determined only by total production, they are influenced by incremental supply changes. If markets believe additional supply can enter when needed, price volatility reduces. Even moderate supply elasticity reduces their premium. This approval is the perceived flexibility. Now, flexibility changes the expectation, and expectation the prices. Now, let's examine why Reliance specifically benefits. Venezuelan crude is heavy and often discounted. Reliance operates complex refineries optimized for heavy crude. Complex refineries extract more value from discounted barrels. Lower input cost. Complex processing capability is potential improvement in gross refining margin. So this is the commercial layer, but it is not the strategic layer. The strategic layer is the geopolitical leverage. So first of all, why did the US allow this? There were structural reasons: inflation sensitivity to global markets, supply stabilization, and diplomatic flexibility. Energy price spikes contribute directly to inflation volatility, allowing controlled supply reduce extreme price swing. This is not sanction removal, it is supply calibration. But what does this mean for India? Now, India imports over 80% of its crude oil. Diversification reduces the supply vulnerability. Access to Middle Eastern oil, Russian oil, sanction calibrated Venezuelan oil increases the negotiation leverage. Energy security improves when supply sources expand. This strengthens the strategic flexibility. But expanding supply also affects global producers. If additional non-traditional supply enters the market, established producers must respond. Supply management becomes more competitive, even small changes after negotiation dynamic. Precedent matters. Controlled flexibility signals elasticity. Elasticity reduces the extreme volatility. Oil influences transport cost, manufacturing input cost, trade deficit, currency pressure. Reduced supply volatility stabilizes the inflation expectation. Stable expectation reduce the currency pressure. Energy supply decision ripple through macro systems. Now, let's connect the full structure. This decision simultaneously expands the supply flexibility, enhances the refining arbitrage, strengthens the India's diversification, and calibrates global volatility expectation. It is a supply control adjustment, not just a corporate approval. So, what should investors do? They should monitor the Brent crude behavior, gross refining margin, Venezuelan export volumes, OPEC communication, and India's crude import mix. If the supply elasticity increases materially, volatility compresses. If volumes remain limited, impact stays moderate. Oil markets are shaped by marginal supply control. Marginal supply is shaped by diplomacy. Now, diplomacy reshapes the economic leverage. Understanding the chain allows structured interpretation of energy news. Most commentary reacts to headlines. Professional analysis interprets the structure. If you want structured financial explanation grounded in system rather than noise, that is what this channel delivers. This is not simply about importing crude oil, it is about controlled supply recalibration. And in oil markets, supply control determines the pricing.